Hello and welcome to KU Pathashala. This is Bhagya Rajeshwari and I am a language instructor. Today we are discussing a novel that has gone through a number of bans and legal challenges throughout the history of its publication. Now this isn't anything new to literature as such, because literature has witnessed a number of bans in its history, be it Madame Bovary, be it Satanic Verses, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Lolita, or be it even the Harry Potter series, which I guess it went through at least 6 book burnings in the United States. The reasons might vary for the book for each ban, but it all points towards the same thing, the power of words. People who went against these books, they firmly believe that this could influence minds, because that is the power of words, that's the power of this medium. Now today we are discussing one such novel that depicted the political scenario of the times, of that of Stalinist Russia and Nazi Germany. Again, I am pretty sure some of you might have guessed by now, yes, you're right, we are discussing 1984 by George Orwell. Now, George Orwell was his pen name, or we know him through this name, but his actual name was Eric Arthur Blair. Now, he was a journalist. He was primarily a journalist, but he was also, along with being an essayist and a novelist and a writer, and he was quite popular for upholding his political views. And this is quite evident and obvious in his writings, where he opposed any sort of all kinds of totalitarianism, and he was a great supporter of democratic socialism. Now, because he was a journalist, it was quite, he tended to take on an investigative, argumentative tone sometimes taking sides, sometimes offering supporting claims, sometimes offering supportive arguments in his writings. Now this was quite clear, and he continued to be a socialist throughout his life, and also continued to resist totalitarianism in any form. Now published in 1949, this was his 9th and final book. 1984 is nothing but a perfect example of a dystopian fiction, 1984. Now this was published in 1949, so there is one reason that is given, a kind of a quirky reason for the title. It was 1948 when he completed the writing, so it was slight change in the digits of that particular year that gave him the title of the year 1984. So the entire plot is set in a futuristic landscape in 1984. It's a futuristic setting that you find in the plot of the book. So this 1984 by George Orwell is often compared to one of the finest dystopian fictions we already have before George Orwell's 1984, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. It's constantly compared to that as well. So we have a few fine dystopian fiction in our in literature, in English literature, and 1984 is one among them. So this was the final and 9th book. Now the story is set in a futuristic setting, as I mentioned. The world is suffering due to constant wars. Now this could be an indication, this could be him pointing towards a world war that he had witnessed. There was incessant surveillance and propaganda. Orwell introduces a couple of terms in 1984 which has gone viral, if I am using the terminology of today, which has gone viral actually. He has brought in phrases like Big Brother, thought police, thought crime, memory hole, and a couple of them pretty scary, as we will be discussing that as we progress. These phrases, these words became very popular through 1984. These are used in the media today, these are used in day-to-day language today, so you can imagine the kind of influence and impact this novel has had on the public. In the novel, there is Airstrip 1, which is nothing but Great Britain. that is now a province of Oceania, a superstate. Now, Oceania has employed the thought police, and the purpose of employing thought police is that they constantly surveys people's thoughts. Now, I don't think anything can get scarier than that. Imagine your thoughts being surveyed, you know, somebody supervising what you're thinking, somebody telling you what to think, what not to think, somebody supervising what you think and punishing you on what you think. It's extremely scary. And I think we all can relate to this, considering the current situations, current times that we're living in. So, in Oceania, which is a fictional setting in 1984, he introduces thought police who constantly surveys thoughts of people to curb individuality and independent thinking, basically curbing creativity as well. Now, freedom of expression has always been one of the much talked about themes among in most of the writings of dystopian fiction. Now, thought police exist in one way or the other. The repeated, if we talk about the times that we are living in, the repeated Google ads that comes over as we are watching some digital content online, isn't that thought, you know, isn't that a kind of a policing, you know, kind of looking at what you like, you know, it's the Google probably is keeping a tab of, keeping a record of what you watch, what you like, what you are not, what you're leaving out. It's kind of, you know, giving you options based on what we are searching. So, basically it's a sort of a policing happening on what we are doing. So, these kinds of thought policing is nothing new to us. I think we've already reached a point where we are under surveillance. Why do you think there is so much of talks going on these days about keeping the data private, you know, these days, and how safe our data is? So, there is so much of talk already out there. I think 1984 becomes extremely significant at this point of time, where social media, where the digital content, where the digital space has taken over everything like never before. I think 1984, with its concept of a thought police, of a thought crime, of a big brother, is very, very important to us. I think we can relate to it very much. We don't have to go, you know, in search of any other places to understand the story, the plot, but we can very well relate to this. As you think about it, about how the digital content, how the online spaces that we inhabit today have thought police, as you think about it, let me also take you to the plot of the story. Now, the story revolves around, the story has, you know, the province, the airstrip 1, it is taken over by Oceania, and in Oceania we have the thought police who is employed by the big brother. Now, this is another term that would frequently pop up as we are discussing this plot of 1984, because this is one of the most important figures in 1984. He is a leader of the party who enjoys a cult status. He is constantly brought into the novel, he is constantly mentioned, he is always there, he is like an omnipresent, all-knowing being, but not a single time do we see him. Not a single time in the novel is he brought into actual daylight where we get to see him, or where we get to read about how he looks like and everything. He is there, but he is also not there. So, it's a thought, it's almost an uncertain figure. So, the fear of the uncertain is you know, kindled. You know there is somebody watching over you, you know there is somebody who is omnipresent, there is somebody who knows everything what you are doing. So, that kind of a figure is introduced in 1984, and that is Big Brother. People are continuously monitored by thought police, and those who are found to disobey, and this is another thing that the thought police does. If they find that you're disobeying the party, then you are termed as thought criminals. And the next step that they do is they label you as unpersons, and then you disappear without a trace. You don't exist anymore. That's what the thought police do. So, you're constantly surveyed, you are labeled as thought criminals, then you are tagged as unpersons, and then you are completely vanished. Then you completely vanish from there, and there is no proof or record of your existence. Now, the protagonist of the story is a man called Winston Smith. Now, he's the hero of the story. We can call him, if not hero, he's a central character. The story progresses or evolves through him. Now, Winston Smith works at the Ministry of Truth. Now, what is the greatest paradox here? What happens at the Ministry of Truth? Now, the Ministry of Truth, they constantly revamp history in favor of the state. They rewrite history in favor of the state. And Winston Smith's job is to do that. Along with rewriting this history, what they also do is they destroy the original documents. They do not leave behind any sort of proof that might later on lead to questions. So, the Ministry of Truth, this is the highest paradox, you know. So, it actually contradicts whatever they're doing there, contradicts the name, the tag, the label of the ministries at the Ministry of the Truth. This is what happens. So, he knows what he's doing. Vincent is aware, he's well aware of what he's doing. In the heart of hearts, he actually disagrees and dissents the party. He is somebody who does not conform to the ideology and the norms of the party. So, according to the thought police, he's a thought criminal. He knows that he's already under their radar, and you know, then the day is not far where he will be caught by the thought police. He's by now a thought criminal just because he thought against the party, just because he dissents the party's norms, just because he protests in mind against the party's ideologies. He's a thought criminal. Now, this is Winston Smith. Now, as the story progresses, Winston meets a man called Mr. Charrington. Now, Mr. Charrington he comes out as a owner of an antique shop, from where he buys a diary, from where Winston buys a diary, a book wherein he decides to pen down all his thoughts against the party. Why doesn't he like the party? What does he think is wrong with the party? And so on and so forth. And he shares this with Mr. Charrington, who just listened to him. There is another character, Julia, who is equally important. She also works at the Ministry of Truth. They fall in love. They develop a sort of a feeling for each other. Winston and Julia fall for each other when Julia says that she also, initially Winston thinks that she is a spy, but then the thing about the 1984 is that there is a constant, the fact that there is thought police, the fact that there is a constant surveillance going on, people are always alert, people are always suspicious about each other. You cannot just trust a person easily. You don't do that. Winston also kind of suspiciously watches Julia because he thinks she could be a thought police. She could be somebody who works with the thought police. She could be a spy. But later on, she reveals to him that she is also somebody who does not like the party. But she is not someone who dissents the party as much as Winston does. Because for her, she is not much, she isn't somebody who has great clarity over the political scenario. It's just that she just randomly dislikes the party. That's it. She's done and dusted about the whole thing. But Winston is not like that. He actually wants to overthrow this regime. He wants this rule to end. He doesn't want this party to continue ruling. So that's exactly why he is a thought criminal. Now, the story takes a turn when Winston meets another character called O'Brien, who pays him a visit, and he introduces himself as somebody from the Brotherhood. Now, somebody from the Brotherhood only means somebody who represents a big brother. And he hands over a book to Winston to read. And the book was all about the party, the power status, what the party does, how the party reacts to certain things. It was all about the party, its ideologies, and everything explained well enough. Following which, Julia and Winston gets arrested by the thought police for plotting, for writing, for expressing their opinion against the party. They are tortured. They go through a lot of torture and trouble. Finally, one of the most scariest point in the book is when they are taken to room 101. Now, this is a room which is scared, which people are usually terrified of. Now, this kind of a setting, they kind of, the writer builds up the suspense about the room. And we as a reader also become very, we become very curious and anxious to know what exactly happens inside room 101. And we know that that is the most dangerous place to be. That's where the extreme form of tortures are done to people who disobey the party. Both Julia and Vincent are taken there, but at the end of the day, they are human beings. Nobody wants to get tortured. They betray each other in order to save their lives. And they come out in different ways. They come out of room 101 and they do not meet, but they meet after a long time. When they meet after a long time, they confess to each other that they had betrayed each other there and they do not have any feelings for each other. And they part ways. But that's not the end of it. There comes a point, he understands, you know, as Vincent was escaping from, I wouldn't call it an escape because he was allowed to go outside. Now, how was he allowed to go outside? He was allowed to go outside because there came a point when Vincent realized that there is no escape. He cannot escape the big brother. He has to stay there, and the big brother can actually get inside you. He can actually control what you think. He can actually make you obey. There is a point which is extremely scary as you read it. When Vincent was forced to agree that 2 plus 2 equals to 5. If the big brother says that 2 plus 2 equals to 5, finally Vincent agrees to it because he knew that he doesn't stand a chance against this big brother or the party. If he has to survive, he has to agree to their norms, and he does. So the novel ends, this dystopian novel ends with Winston, the sole protagonist, the sole man who wanted to dissent, who wanted to go against the party, the man who wanted to overthrow this regime and end this rule. The novel ends with this very same man submitting himself to the big brother. I think 1984, if you look at it as a novel, it falls under dystopian fiction, but I think it's scarier than a horror novel because it tells you a lot of truths. It tells you about a lot of probabilities. It tells you about the fear of uncertainty. It tells you about possibilities. It tells you about how the world can be. You know, this could also be one way in which the world can be, and if the world becomes like this, things can get scarier for people. So at the end of the day, I would suggest you to read 1984, not because it's dystopian, not because it can be depressing and shocking, but also for the element of suspense this holds till the end of the novel. Till the end of the novel. So like I always say, summaries fall short. So in order to enjoy and get that experience of reading, I think you have to read it. I hope you will all enjoy reading 1984. It reveals a lot to us. It makes you think, and at the end of the day, that's very important. So thank you so much for listening so long. I hope you all have a great time reading 1984 by George Orwell. Thank you so much.